Hello and welcome back. It's lovely to have you with us again as we step into this new space, this new year. There's a particular quiet that follows the holidays, isn't there? A kind of gentle hum that replaces the festive noise.
There really is. It's a quiet I look forward to in a way. It feels like the world takes a collective breath. But then, almost immediately, another feeling starts to creep in. The thought of returning. The thought of work.
Ah, yes, the return. It's such a universal experience, that specific, hard-to-define feeling of gearing back up. Even if you love your job, even if you're looking forward to seeing colleagues and diving into new projects, there's a resistance.
Resistance is the perfect word for it, Ryan. It's not necessarily dread, although it can be for some. For me, it's more like a dissonance, a feeling of being out of sync.
Out of sync, yes. During the holidays, time itself seems to bend. It becomes fluid. Days aren't defined by meetings or deadlines. They're defined by meals, by conversations, by the simple act of being. And then suddenly you're asked to step back into a world of straight lines and sharp edges.
Back into the grid. And your body, your mind, they haven't quite caught up. You're physically at your desk, but your internal rhythm is still on holiday time. It's like trying to play a piece of music in the wrong key. Everything feels just a little bit off.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings up so many mixed emotions, doesn't it? There's the reluctance to let go of that freedom, that unstructured time. But often there's also a layer of guilt.
Oh, the guilt. I should be rested. I should be grateful for the time off. I should be bursting with energy and new ideas. That's the narrative we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And when reality doesn't match that narrative, when you feel more fatigue than fire, more apprehension than ambition, you start to wonder if something's wrong with you. Why am I not motivated? Why does this feel so heavy?
Right. And that heaviness is what we want to explore today. Not to fix it, not to offer 5 tips for boosting productivity, but to simply sit with it, to understand it. Because that feeling, that quiet struggle to re-engage, is profoundly human. It tells us something important about our relationship with work, with rest, and with ourselves.
It does. So, as we begin, let's just take a moment here. Let's pause. If you're listening, perhaps you can join us in this. Just for a second, think about how you felt on that first day back. What were the sensations in your body? What was the dominant emotion? Was it stress? Was it a quiet sadness? Was it a sense of being overwhelmed?
No judgment, just observation. Acknowledging that internal landscape is the first step, because the challenge isn't just about catching up on emails. It's about navigating this complex emotional transition from one state of being to another. And it's a transition that deserves a little more gentleness than we usually give it.
It's fascinating, isn't it, Daisy, how we expect our motivation to be like a light switch? We're off for the holidays, and on the first Monday of January, we're supposed to just flip it back on. Bright, focused, full power.
It's a completely unrealistic expectation, but one we all seem to share. The reality is that motivation is much more like a dimmer switch. It has to be turned up gradually, or perhaps it's not a switch at all, but more like a deep well that needs time to replenish.
Replenish. I like that, because a holiday isn't always about active, energetic replenishment. Sometimes it's just about stopping. It's about depletion recovery. You're not necessarily filling the tank, you're just patching the leaks from the year before.
That's a really important distinction. We think of a vacation as this magical thing that will pour energy back into us. But for many, it's just a period of not having energy drawn out. So when you return to work, the well isn't suddenly overflowing. It's just not empty anymore. And the first few work days feel like they're immediately trying to drain it again.
They do feel heavier those first few days. I remember opening my laptop this year. I like my work. I truly do. But the physical act of opening that device felt symbolic. It was like lifting a heavy shield.
A shield.
And behind it was the flood. The emails, the meeting requests that had come in while I was away, the project updates. Each one felt like a small claim on my time, my energy, my focus. And collectively, they felt like an immense pressure.
And that pressure is both external and internal, isn't it? There's the external reality of the work waiting for you. But the much heavier pressure often comes from within. It's that voice, that internal critic that whispers, you should be on top of this by now.
Right. You should be productive.
You should have a plan. Look at all this work. You're already behind. It's a narrative of lack, of deficit, from the very first minute you're back. It doesn't allow for a gentle re-entry. It demands immediate performance.
I tried to fight that this year. I made a very clear plan. I told myself, on day 1, I'll only focus on sorting emails. Day 2, I'll catch up on communications. Day 3, I'll start the real work. It sounded so logical, so manageable.
And how did that work out in practice?
It fell apart almost immediately, because an email isn't just an email. It's a problem to be solved, a decision to be made, a thread of thought you need to pick back up. My neat little categories dissolved into the messy reality of the work itself. By lunchtime on the first day, I felt more scattered and less productive than if I'd had no plan at all.
That's such a relatable experience. Because the problem isn't the plan. It's the expectation that our brains can switch back into that problem-solving, decision-making mode so cleanly. Psychologically, we're undergoing a significant context shift.
A context shift. Tell me more about that.
Well, during the holidays, our brains are operating in a different mode. We're often more present, more attuned to our senses. We're engaging the parts of our brain associated with social connection, relaxation, and spontaneous activity. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive functions like planning, focusing, and regulating impulses, gets a much-needed break.
Right? It's been idling.
Exactly. Then, on the first day of work, we're asking it to go from 0 to 100. We're demanding intense focus, strategic thinking, and complex problem solving. It's the neurological equivalent of trying to sprint a marathon without warming up. Your brain is literally not primed for that kind of activity yet.
So the feeling of sluggishness, the difficulty concentrating, it's not a moral failing or a lack of discipline. It's a biological reality. The hardware is still rebooting.
It's precisely a biological reality. The neural pathways that were so active before the break have gone a bit dormant. They need to be reactivated, and that takes time and gentle, repeated effort. Forcing it just leads to cognitive friction and frustration.
And that frustration then feeds the negative internal voice, which says, see, you can't even focus. You've lost your edge. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of pressure and disappointment.
Yes, it's a vicious cycle. And it all stems from that fundamental misunderstanding of what's actually happening in our minds and bodies. We're treating a natural recalibration process as a performance problem.
This connects so deeply to the idea of daily routines, doesn't it? The resistance isn't just about the big abstract concept of work. It's about the tiny concrete actions that make up a workday. It's the micro moments.
Absolutely. It starts with the alarm clock.
Oh, the sound of that alarm on the first morning back. After a week or two of waking naturally, guided by sunlight or your own internal clock, that sudden artificial intrusion is brutal. It's the first signal that your time is no longer your own.
It really is. It's a declaration that you are now on someone else's schedule. And every step after that feels subtly different. The act of making coffee, for instance. During the holiday, it's a slow, enjoyable ritual. On a workday, it becomes a necessity, a tool for activation. The purpose shifts from pleasure to function.
From pleasure to function. That's it exactly. And then there's the moment of opening the laptop, as we mentioned. The screen lights up, and with it, the digital version of your professional self. The person who responds to emails within a certain time frame, who attends meetings, who is productive.
And you feel this gap between the person you are in that moment, still slow, still soft from the holiday, and the person the screen expects you to be. It's a performance, and you haven't rehearsed your lines.
Let's talk about the inbox. Inbox overload. It's become a cliche, but the feeling is so real. It's not just the volume of messages, it's the weight of them. Each one represents an unresolved loop, a demand on your cognitive resources.
I've heard it described as a to-do list that other people get to write for you. And when you've been away, that list has grown exponentially. It's a visual representation of everything that moved forward while you were still.
While you were still, that's a powerful way to frame it. There's almost a sense of injustice to it. The world kept spinning, kept making demands, and now you have to pay the price for your period of rest.
And this is where that quiet resistance really kicks in. Your mind knows you have to engage, but your body and your deeper consciousness are still recoiling. That's why you find yourself staring at the screen, reading the same email 3 times. Or why you suddenly feel the urge to go and tidy a bookshelf instead of tackling that report.
It's a form of self-protection. Your system is telling you this is too much, too soon. It's not laziness. It's your nervous system trying to regulate itself in the face of an overwhelming stimulus.
Exactly. It's a natural adaptive response. But we pathologize it. We label it procrastination. We tell ourselves we're undisciplined. We look at our colleagues who appear to be diving right back in and we think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do it?
The mistaken belief that something is wrong with us is perhaps the most damaging part of the whole experience. It adds a layer of shame and anxiety to an already challenging transition. We're not just struggling with the work. We're struggling with ourselves for struggling with the work.
It's so true. We internalize this cultural mandate for constant, seamless productivity. We forget that we are cyclical beings, not machines. We have seasons of rest and seasons of activity, and the transition between them is always going to have some friction.
That friction is just a sign that we're human. It's a reminder that we left one space and are entering another. Perhaps if we reframed it that way, not as a problem to be solved, but as a threshold to be crossed with awareness, it would feel less like a battle.
I think that's the key. Shifting the entire paradigm from productivity to presence, from performance to process, which leads to the idea of a soft return. It's a term that's becoming more popular, but I think we often misunderstand what it really means.
How so? I've always thought of it in very practical terms. Block out your calendar for the first day, put on an out-of-office reply that extends a day longer, things like that. Logistical buffers.
And those logistical buffers are helpful, they are. But they're only the container. The real work of a soft return is internal. It's about emotional readjustment, not just calendar management. It's about consciously giving yourself permission to be in a transitional state.
Permission to be in between. Not quite on holiday, but not quite at full operational capacity either. A liminal space.
Exactly. A liminal space. And that requires a radical lowering of expectations, not just for your output, how many tasks you complete, but for your internal state. Expect to feel scattered. Expect your focus to drift. Expect to feel a little wistful or even resentful. And decide ahead of time that this is all perfectly acceptable.
That's the difficult part, isn't it? The acceptance. We can tell ourselves it's okay, but then the guilt creeps in when we're not performing at our usual level. I'm letting the team down. I'm falling behind.
Right. So the practice is to notice that guilt without getting swept away by it. To say, there's that feeling. The story that I should be doing more. I see it, and I'm choosing to let it go just for this week. It's an active practice of self-compassion.
I like the idea of framing the entire first week back as transitional, not as week 1 of the new working year, but as an orientation week, a buffer period. We do this for new employees. We give them time to acclimate. Why don't we afford ourselves the same grace?
That's such a brilliant reframing. You're reorienting yourself to the landscape of your own work. What are the priorities? What has changed? What requires my energy now? Instead of jumping into action, you're spending time taking stock. It's strategic, really. A slow start can lead to a more sustainable pace later on. It's a grace that has to be self-directed more often than not because the organizational structure rarely allows for it. So what does that personal, internal orientation week actually look like in practice? It can't just be about blocking your calendar. It has to be a shift in mindset. It's about deciding that for these first few days, your primary goal is not output, but recalibration. It's a grace that has to be self-directed more often than not because the organizational structure rarely allows for it. So, what does that personal, internal orientation week actually look like? It can't just be about blocking your calendar. It has to be a shift in mindset. It's about deciding that for these first few days, your primary goal is not output, but recalibration.
It feels like an act of quiet rebellion against the cult of productivity, the idea that our value is intrinsically tied to our output. To consciously choose a slower, more deliberate re-entry is to affirm that we are more than what we produce. We are human beings who need time to adjust.
It is a rebellion, and it's one we need because the pressure for an instant on return is immense. But normalizing a slow return, even just for ourselves, can be transformative. It replaces the anxiety and guilt with a sense of calm agency. You are choosing your pace.
And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson. The return to work after a break isn't just a logistical challenge, it's an invitation. An invitation to check in with ourselves, to observe our own rhythms, and to question the external pressures that so often dictate our lives.
A beautiful invitation, one that asks us to be a little kinder, a little more patient, and a lot more realistic about what it means to be a person in the world of work today.
As we come towards the end of our conversation today, I notice that we haven't arrived at any neat conclusions or solutions. There's no 5-step plan to make the return to work easy.
And I think that's exactly the point. The goal was never to solve it. The difficulty of this transition isn't a problem to be fixed. It's an experience to be understood, to be held with a bit of curiosity.
Yes, to treat it not as a failure of our own motivation, but as a rich source of information. What is this reluctance telling me? What part of the holiday freedom does my spirit miss the most? What is my body asking for that my work life doesn't provide?
Those are the questions that linger. There are no easy answers, and maybe there shouldn't be. Perhaps the value is in the questioning itself, in the act of paying attention to our own inner world, especially at a time when the outer world is demanding so much of our focus.
So, we'd like to leave you not with advice, but with an invitation. An invitation to simply observe your own pace in these first few weeks. Notice the moments of resistance. Notice the small moments of flow when they appear. Don't judge them. Don't try to force anything. Just watch.
Be a gentle observer of your own experience. The slowness, the dissonance, the fatigue, it's all part of the process. It's the texture of being human, and allowing it to be there without a fight is perhaps the kindest and most productive thing we can do.
Thank you for spending this quiet time with us. Be well and be gentle with yourselves.